What if the wine you drink remembers you? There's a vineyard nestled deep in the hills of Oregon, off the maps, off the roads, and far beyond reason. They say the soil there is rich, but no one asks what it's rich with. This is the story of inheritance, sacrifice, and a ritual sealed in crimson. A story where each bottle holds a secret and every toast is a pact. Welcome to the vineyard where blood runs deeper than wine. The Townsend Cellar. They said the cellar door had never been opened since 1879, even when the house had changed owners 3 times in the last 50 years. When a fire gutted the eastern wing in 1952, and again when the whole estate was repossessed by the bank in 1996, the cellar door remained untouched, sealed shut by rusted bolts, red wax, and something older than both. Nathaniel never believed in curses. Not when he taught architecture at a college that prided itself on logic and modernism, but curses didn't care if you believed. They just waited, and sometimes they wrote you letters. The envelope had arrived 2 days ago, yellowed and creased at the edges, bearing no return address, just a line in cursive ink across the back. For the last living blood. That alone might have gone ignored. Junk mail had grown stranger by the year, but the letter inside was written in a hurried, trembling hand and signed with a name Nathaniel hadn't heard since childhood. Clara Townsend, his grandmother's name. She'd died before he was born, or so he'd always been told, but the letters spoke of things that couldn't be dismissed so easily, of a hidden cellar, of something beneath Ashfield Hollow that had never stopped breathing, and of a legacy, his legacy, tied to blood, bone, and wine. Nathaniel had tried to laugh it off. He showed the letter to his fiancée Elise, expecting her to scoff, maybe tease him for being rattled by some prank. But she read it 3 times in silence, her brow furrowed deeper with each pass. She traced the name Clara with her finger like it meant something personal, something long buried. "We need to go," she said that night over dinner. "Ashfield Hollow is only 2 hours north. If there's any truth to this, don't you want to know?" He didn't, not really. But Elise had always carried a kind of quiet gravity, and when she looked at him that way, serious, expectant, he followed. The road to Ashfield Hollow was lined with withered oaks and sagging barns, remnants of a farming past that never fully surrendered to time. The town itself was a cluster of homes, a single church and a general store that hadn't changed signage since the 1950s. Time moved slower here, or maybe it stopped altogether. They checked into the only bed and breakfast, run by a woman named Martha who looked like she'd been carved from the same wood as the furniture. "You here for the fall colors?" she asked, eyeing them too low. "Bit early, ain't it?" Nathaniel smiled. "Just passing through, visiting some family land." Martha nodded, but her eyes narrowed at the word family. The Townsend estate stood at the edge of the woods, a 3-story Queen Anne house with a collapsing porch and stained glass that hadn't caught sunlight in decades. Ivy choked the foundation. Dead vines curled over the shutters like grasping fingers. Nathaniel had seen the property in old black and white photos, kept in a box under his father's bed. But the real thing felt heavier, as though the land itself exhaled through the floorboards. They let themselves in with the rusted key, sent in the same envelope as the letter. The front door groaned like something waking up. Inside, the air was damp with old wood and mildew. Wallpaper peeled like rotted skin. A grandfather clock in the foyer ticked, though no one had wound it in years. "It's like time forgot to end here," Elise murmured, brushing dust from a faded painting of a woman in black. Her eyes were strikingly similar to Elise's, sharp, gray, watchful. The nameplate read Clara Townsend, 1871. "That's unsettling," Nathaniel muttered. They explored in silence, each creaking board a reluctant memory underfoot. The cellar door wasn't hard to find. It was in the kitchen, beneath a warped rug and hidden behind a cabinet Elise noticed was oddly out of place. She pushed it aside with both hands. Nathaniel stared at the door. Black iron hinges, 3 locks crusted in red wax, and a sigil etched above the handle, 3 interlocking circles surrounding an empty chalice. "Wine cellar?" Elise asked. too calm. "Maybe," he whispered, but he knew better. Wine didn't get locked behind wax and iron. They didn't open it, not yet. That night, back at the B&B, Nathaniel couldn't sleep. The letter replayed in his head. What we stored beneath the earth did not stay dormant. The wine we made was never just wine. You must understand, Nathaniel. The family never died. We transformed. He wanted to believe it was a lie, some elaborate hoax by a forgotten cousin with too much imagination, but his dreams disagreed. He saw vines growing through bone, barrels filled with thick, red fluid that screamed when tapped. He saw Clara's face, unchanged since 1871, whispering through the darkness, "You are the last blood. You must drink." He woke up gasping. The next morning, he found Elise sitting by the kitchen window with an old map spread across the table. She didn't look up. "The cellar? It's older than the house," she said quietly. "I found a mention in the Ashfield church records. The original Townsend Chapel was built over it in 1793. Burned down, no explanation. The estate was raised after, using some of the same stones." Nathaniel's mouth was dry. "Why didn't anyone say anything?" Elise looked at him then, her eyes different, sharper. "Because they wanted it to stay buried. By noon, they were back in the estate. This time, Nathaniel brought bolt cutters and a crowbar. The air around the cellar door had shifted, cooler, denser, as though the room anticipated their return. He cracked the first lock, then the second. Wax flaked off like old scabs. When he broke the final seal, the sigil above the handle pulsed faintly, as if inked with something still alive. The door creaked open. Stale air rushed out. Not moldy, not foul, but sweet. Sickly sweet, like overripe fruit and rust. A staircase spiraled downward into complete blackness. No light, no sound, just the slow, rhythmic drip, drip, drip of something unseen. "I'll go first," Elise said. Nathaniel grabbed her arm. "No, we go together." They descended. The Townsend cellar. The steps were stone, slick with condensation and worn concave by centuries of use. Nathaniel counted each one in his head to distract from the cold breath against his skin, the kind of subterranean chill that felt alive, as if it noticed your presence and leaned in closer. Elise walked ahead, her flashlight beam catching glints of metal embedded in the walls. At first, he thought they were nails. Then he realized they were teeth. Human teeth. Rows of them, mortared into the stone. "What the hell is this place?" he whispered. Elise didn't answer. Her light continued sweeping, revealing a narrow corridor lined with barrel racks. Some were intact, their iron rings thick with rust. Others had split open, their contents long evaporated or consumed. One barrel oozed a dark residue that still shimmered wet under the beam. Nathaniel knelt beside it, touched the smear with his finger, then sniffed. Not wine. Something. Saltier. Metallic. "Blood?" Elise asked, her voice steady. He didn't respond. They reached an open chamber at the end of the corridor. It was circular, domed, with thick wooden beams bracing the walls like the inside of a cathedral built underground. In the center stood a long stone table, stained deep maroon. Around it were 8 high-backed chairs, all empty except one. A figure sat motionless in the farthest seat. Nathaniel froze. "Elise," he said quietly, "back up." She didn't move. The figure was dressed in old mourning attire, black lace veil, gloves, and a bodice darkened by time. A cloud of cobwebs clung to her shoulders. Her head hung downward, and her hands rested neatly on the table, fingers curled inward. Nathaniel approached slowly. The air thickened with each step. Closer now. He could make out the shape of her face beneath the veil. Sharp cheekbones, high brow, lips slightly parted, and then her hand moved. Just a twitch, barely enough to notice, but he saw it. "Elise," he said again, louder now. "We need to—" "She's not dead," Elise murmured. "She's waiting." Nathaniel turned to her. Her voice had a new resonance, like two tones speaking at once. "Elise?" She blinked, shook her head. I don't know what that was. I'm fine." He didn't believe her. The figure in the chair stirred again, her head lifted just a few degrees, enough for her to look directly at them through the veil. Eyes like tarnished silver, pupils wide and shining. "Welcome back," she rasped. Nathaniel stumbled backward. What are you?" The woman rose with unnatural smoothness, like a marionette pulled from above. She reached for the table, drew back a cloth covering a small stone basin at its center. The contents rippled. It wasn't water. It wasn't wine. It was thicker, redder, and it smelled like burned flowers and marrow. "You were never meant to leave," the woman said. "We never lived here," Nathaniel replied, trembling. This place has nothing to do with me." The woman smiled, thin and dry as parchment. "You're Townsend. Blood knows blood. This house remembers." From the shadows behind her, a second figure emerged. Taller, male, barefoot and shirtless, skin pale as candle wax. He wore a mask shaped like a ram's skull. In his hands he held a ceremonial cup carved from bone. Elise stepped forward, as if drawn. "Elise, no!" Nathaniel grabbed her wrist, but her expression had changed. Calm, almost reverent. "I dreamt this," she whispered, "every night since the letter arrived. The cellar, the blood, the cup. It was always me." "No," he said firmly, pulling her back, but the figure in the mask had already extended the cup toward her. The woman in black nodded. "It must begin again. The wine must be fed." Elise reached out, and then the lights went out. Total blackness. Nathaniel felt her hand slip from his, heard her footsteps shuffle across the stone, then a splash. "Elise!" he screamed. No answer. A glow appeared in the far corner of the chamber, dim, flickering red, like fireflies underwater. It illuminated a mural that he hadn't seen before. Painted in blood and wine across the curved wall was a depiction of 8 figures seated around the table. Each one held a chalice, their eyes hollowed, mouths opened in screams or songs. And above them, a 9th figure stood, taller, faceless, arms raised, veins branching like roots across its body. At the figure's feet was a child with Nathaniel's face. The wine remembers it was still dark when Nathaniel woke gasping, fingers clutched into the bed sheets like claws. For a moment, he didn't recognize where he was. The ceiling was too low, the walls too wide. He sat up, heart pounding, cold sweat soaked through his t-shirt. Elise was gone. He swung his legs off the bed and looked around the room. Morning hadn't arrived, only the first thin slice of gray filtered through the warped shutters. The air was dense, unmoving, like something thick had settled over the entire house. He called her name. No answer. A memory struck him like a hammer. The woman in black, the ram-macked figure, the mural on the wall, the child with his face. "Jesus," he muttered, stumbling to his feet. The floorboards groaned beneath him as he crept down the hall, every step heavier than it should have been. He passed the faded portraits again, the same Townsend ancestors Elise had insisted they catalog. Only now, the expressions on the faces seemed subtly different, more aware, more focused. He paused at one in particular, a stern woman in late 1800s mourning attire. She looked almost identical to the figure in the cellar. Below the painting, a brass nameplate read, "Eleanor Townsend, 321-891. The dates didn't line up with what they'd been told. Elise said the cellar hadn't been opened in over 100 years, but 1891 wasn't that long ago, at least not for the condition the place was in. "Elise," he called again, louder now. "Elise," he called again, louder now. Still nothing. Then a creak answered him from downstairs. Not just any creak, a long, slow weight shifting over wood. He grabbed the railing. "Elise?" Another sound. A chair scraping against tile. He descended carefully, his socks silent on the carpet runner. The kitchen was empty, but the door to the back porch stood ajar. Beyond it, mist hung low over the fields, stretching toward the edge of the woods like spilled milk. And there she was. Elise stood barefoot in the grass, nightgown clinging to her like gauze. She faced away from him, utterly still. One arm hung at her side, the other held something, a glass. He stepped onto the porch. The old wood shrieked underfoot. She turned slowly. The wine glass in her hand was full, not of wine, something thicker, red. "Where did you get that?" he asked. Elise blinked. "It was waiting for me in the cellar." "No," he said, voice hoarse. "We left. I dragged you out of there. I went back." Her tone was matter-of-fact, like she'd simply returned to retrieve a forgotten coat. "I had to. You don't understand what this place is. You sound insane." She looked at him then, sharply. "And you sound like your father." The words hit harder than he expected. "My father died in prison for a murder he didn't commit, or so you believe," she said calmly. But he wasn't the first Townsend to carry that lie, was he? He stared at her. "Elise, we need to leave, today." She looked back toward the tree. "I can't. Not yet." And just like that, she walked past him into the house, wineglass still in hand. Later that morning, Nathaniel went back to the cellar entrance. It was locked. Padlocked, in fact, with a chain he didn't remember installing. The air around it was warmer than before, almost humid. He pressed his ear to the old wood. Faintly he heard something, scraping, as if nails were being dragged across stone. By afternoon, the house had turned restless. Doors shifted in their frames. The piano in the sitting room emitted soft, breathless notes, despite no one touching it. The attic fan clicked on and off at random, pulling with it the sound of wind that wasn't there. Nathaniel found Elise in the study, leafing through an old ledger. Her skin was pale, lips dry, but her eyes burned with focus. "What's that?" he asked. "Family records," she replied, "or some version of them. Look." He leaned over her shoulder. On the yellowing page was an entry, handwritten in a precise, narrow script. November 6th, 1901. The harvest complete. 9 offered, 1 returned. The wine is fed, the blood is kept. Nathaniel's skin crawled. What the hell does that mean? "It's ritualistic," she said. "Offerings, sacrifice, something older than this house." He stepped back. "You're talking like you believe this." "Elise, it's just a myth. Old paper, mad ancestors." She shut the ledger with a snap. "Then why does my mouth taste like iron every morning?" He didn't have an answer. That night, Nathaniel couldn't sleep. The sheets were clean, the room was quiet, but something unseen pressed at the walls of his thoughts. At 3:13 a.m., he woke with a jolt, not from sound, from presence. The window stood wide open. Outside, near the edge of the fields, stood a figure, tall, barefoot, a ram's skull gleaming in the moonlight. Nathaniel sat frozen, breath held. Then the figure raised one hand and pointed, not at the house, at him. At that very moment, something inside the floorboards beneath his bed began to knock. Once, twice, then a voice whispering through the vents. "Blood knows blood." The wine remembers Nathaniel didn't sleep after that. He sat at the edge of the bed until the light turned blue-gray, watching the window where the figure had stood. When dawn finally crept over the horizon, he went downstairs and locked every door and window in the house. Elise was already awake, sitting in the breakfast nook, calmly sipping coffee. Her gaze met his with an eerie placidity. "You saw him," she said, not a question. He didn't answer. "Did he speak to you?" she asked. He shook his head. "He never speaks until the 3rd night," she said, almost gently. Nathaniel felt his stomach turn. "What are you talking about?" Instead of responding, Elise stood and placed her cup in the sink. The wine glass from the night before still sat on the counter, now empty. Dried red residue clung to the inside like rust. "I need you to come with me," she said. "There's something you have to see." They walked through the overgrown garden behind the house, along a narrow dirt path that wound behind the trellis and into a cluster of wild oaks. Nathaniel hadn't been out this far before. The ground grew uneven, full of dips and ancient roots. Morning dew clung to everything like static. At the end of the path stood a shed, or what had once been a shed. Now, it was little more than a sagging box of rotted wood and ivy. Elise moved toward it without hesitation. This was the original storage cellar before the main house was expanded in the 1930s, she said. They used it to keep the oldest barrels, the blood harvests. Nathaniel froze. What? Elise tugged the door open. The hinges groaned like an animal in pain. Inside, the air smelled of copper and mildew. Stone steps led down into the earth. "You can stay," she said without looking back, "but you won't be able to deny it much longer." And then she vanished below. Nathaniel stood there, heart pounding for a long moment. Then he followed. The descent was steep, narrow. The walls were lined with limestone, slick with condensation. At the bottom, he found Elise, standing beside a row of massive oak barrels, each one blackened by time. In the dim lamplight, their metal bands gleamed like bone. She held up a small ledger. Not the one from the study, a different one, older. The pages were nearly petrified with age. "This is what they never published," she said. "The real history, hidden beneath the wine labels and romantic legends." She opened to a page and read aloud. "September 2nd, 1851. We were 4, then 3. The child came back different. She no longer slept. She only drank. We sealed the entrance again." Elise's voice faltered. Nathaniel looked down the corridor of barrels. One stood slightly ajar. "Elise," he whispered, "did you open that?" She turned slowly. "I didn't have to. It opens on its own when the bloodline returns." He stepped back. No, we're just descendants, distant. This is folklore." She looked at him with pity. "You're not just descended. You're a key." A sudden thump echoed from the barrel. Something was inside. No, something was trying to get out. They left the old cellar in silence. That night, Elise lit candles in the sitting room, a full circle of them, positioned carefully around the room. Nathaniel sat on the couch, arms wrapped tight around himself. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Preparing," she said, "for the second night. Elise, he'll come again, and this time he'll try to enter the house." Nathaniel laughed, a sharp sound that felt like it didn't belong to him. "And what? You're gonna stop him with candles and incense?" Her voice was steady. "I'm going to offer something else, something he hasn't tasted in a long time." She reached into her pocket and held out a small vial. Inside was her own blood. "You're insane," Nathaniel said, recoiling. She only smiled, faint and tired. "You'll see." Just past midnight, the wind began to howl. The shutters clattered against the walls. Upstairs, the old pipes groaned like voices. From the cellar came the sound of something breathing, slow, wet. Elise stood in the center of the candle circle, arms outstretched. Nathaniel watched from the doorway. The air in the room thickened. Then, from the fireplace, a hand emerged, pale, thin, with long black nails. It gripped the hearthstone and pulled. The figure that emerged was not a man, not a ghost, not anything Nathaniel had ever seen. Its face was stitched in strips, some of them human, others animal. Antlers burst from its skull like roots from dead soil. Its eyes burned, but not with light, with memory. Elise stepped forward and extended the vial. The figure tilted its head. It sniffed. Then, slowly, it reached out and placed its hand on her stomach. She gasped. Nathaniel lunged forward. "Get away from her!" But the figure had already begun to retreat, fading into smoke, bones, and shadow. Elise collapsed to the floor. Nathaniel ran to her side. "Elise!" "Elise," he shouted. She opened her eyes. "I saw her," she whispered. "The child." Nathaniel stared. "A child? but she was already unconscious. The next morning, Nathaniel found a letter on his pillow. It was written in Elise's handwriting. "If you read this, I've gone back down into the oldest cellar. The thing that touched me, it left something behind. I can feel it inside me. I have to know the truth before it grows. Don't follow me." He rushed down the back path to the old shed. The door hung open. Inside, the steps led down into darkness. A fresh trail of red drops marked the way, and at the bottom of the stairs, the barrels were no longer sealed, and one was empty, but not silent. Something small was breathing in the shadows. Then came a faint giggle. A child's. It echoed off the stone like wine dripping into a full glass. The fermentation below? They say old wine breathes when the cork is loosened, but in the Townsend cellar, something else was learning to breathe. Nathaniel stood frozen at the foot of the stone steps, heart hammering in his chest. The sound, the giggle, still echoed faintly, as if the stones themselves were trying to remember how to laugh. "Elise!" he called out, voice cracking. No response. The dim lantern he held cast long, nervous shadows across the limestone walls. The barrels loomed around him like tombstones, their ancient staves sweating with dark moisture. He stepped forward, following the crimson droplets on the floor, each one bright, recent, and oddly thick. He didn't notice the chill until his breath clouded in the air. "Elise!" he shouted louder. Still nothing. Only the steady sound of liquid somewhere deeper in the dark. He rounded a corner. The barrel that had stood slightly ajar yesterday was now wide open. Its interior was empty. No wine, no sediment, nothing. But the inside was slick with something darker than any vintage. There was a symbol carved into the wood behind it, 3 interlocking rings, like a trinity of serpents, biting each other's tails. He reached out, compelled to touch it. "Elise, don't." Nathaniel spun around, but no one was there. It was his own voice, whispered back at him from the stones, mocking. He returned to the house at dawn, shaken and breathless, only to find Elise standing barefoot in the kitchen. Her hair was wet, mud streaked her dress, but her face held a calm expression, almost serene. "You went down there," she said softly. "What the hell is happening to you?" he demanded. She poured herself a cup of tea as if nothing had occurred. "I remember now. Not everything, but enough. Elise, something is inside that place. Something that laughed like a child." She looked up at him, eyes rimmed with sleep or maybe something else. "It wasn't always evil. You have to understand the family didn't create the darkness. They bargained with it." He slammed his fist on the table. "Stop talking in riddles." She didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into a drawer and pulled out a faded photograph, sepia-toned and creased with age. It showed a group of men in long coats standing before a row of barrels identical to the ones in the lower cellar. In the center stood a woman, no older than Elise, with a child in her arms. The child's eyes had been scratched out. "My great-great-grandmother," Elise said. Her name was Maureen. She was the first to open the cask. Nathaniel studied the image. "And the child?" "They say it was born dead," she said, but Maureen insisted it spoke to her, that it taught her how to make the deep wine, the red that fermented even in dry years, the wine that made Townsend famous. He leaned back, goosebumps rippling down his arms. "So what? Your family sold their soul for better wine?" "Not their soul," Elise said, sipping her tea. "Their children." That afternoon, Elise vanished again. Nathaniel tore through the house, searching every room, every attic hatch, every linen closet. Panic set in fast. She wasn't in the vineyard, not in the tasting room, not near the woodshed. Then he remembered the ledger, the older one Elise had shown him. He ran to the study. The safe was already open. Pages fluttered from the old logbook like dying wings. He flipped through them with frantic hands until he found the date. October 3, 1913. "We placed the infant inside. They said it would quiet the roots." The wine grew darker, the barrels stayed full, but the mother returned each night. She stood by the cellar door and wept. When she stopped weeping, the vines began to bleed. A knock echoed from the front door. Nathaniel flinched. Who the hell would come to Townsend House? He approached the entry cautiously and opened it. A young boy stood on the porch, dressed in old-fashioned suspenders, barefoot and muddy. His skin was too pale, his mouth too wide. He grinned, and in the boy's hand was Elise's locket. Nathaniel lunged forward, but the boy vanished like fog in sunlight. The locket dropping with a metallic clink on the stone steps. He picked it up, hand trembling. Inside, the photograph of Elise and her mother had been replaced. Now it showed the old cellar door, and it was open. At nightfall, Nathaniel armed himself with a flashlight, a crowbar, and a growing sense of dread. He returned to the underground. Deeper this time, beyond the known barrels, into parts of the winery that had been bricked over and buried in renovation. The walls grew narrower. He had to crouch. Eventually, he reached a sealed archway. On it, more symbols, rings within rings. A cluster of vines forming what looked like an eye. He pried at the stones. Behind the final slab was a small chamber, and in the center of it, a child-sized cask, not a barrel, a coffin shaped like one. Dark wood stained with red veins. It pulsed, a heartbeat. Inside the cask, something knocked 3 times, then silence. Then a whisper, so faint he thought it might have come from inside his head. "You left the door open, Nathaniel. The thing that never died." The knocking didn't stop. Nathaniel stepped back, flashlight flickering in his grip. The heartbeat inside the cask continued, soft, steady, and far too human. Every instinct screamed for him to flee, but he couldn't. Not when Elise was still missing. Not when he knew whatever lay inside was the key. He knelt beside the cask. "Who are you?" he whispered. There was no answer. Only breath. Yes, breath. The faintest inhale from inside the sealed wood. He reached forward, fingers brushing the edge of the lid. Then, a voice, high and childish, echoed through the chamber. "Is it dark where you are?" Nathaniel stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. The beam danced across the chamber, revealing more. Scribbles on the walls, charcoal figures of vines wrapping around skeletons, hollow-eyed children, and a woman drawn over and over, her arms outstretched as if offering something unseen. He had to get out. He turned and Elise stood in the doorway. Her dress was soaked, her hands stained deep red. In the pale beam of his flashlight, she looked almost translucent, like light could pass through her if it tried hard enough. "Elise," he gasped. "I thought I had to come back," she interrupted. "What is that thing?" he demanded, gesturing to the cask. "What the hell is in there?" She stepped closer, slowly. "It's what they fed, what they promised. Elise, it's our bloodline." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "No, you're not saying my grandmother called it the first pour," Elise continued, voice drifting. "They gave it the unwanted, the sick, the stillborn. In return, the vines grew sweeter, but they never buried it deep enough." Nathaniel stared at her. "It's alive." "Yes," she said, "and it remembers." Behind her, the symbols on the stone began to pulse, faint red glows beating in rhythm with the thing inside the cask. And then Nathaniel understood what Elise meant when she said she remembered. She wasn't fully her anymore. "Elise," he said, stepping toward her, "you have to fight it. Whatever it is, whatever it's trying to make you believe." "I'm not fighting it," she whispered. "I'm protecting it." She reached behind her and pulled something from her coat. A long corking needle, the same one used to sample wine from deep inside the barrels. "Please," Nathaniel warned. "I just need 1 drop," she murmured. Before he could stop her, she stepped toward the cask and drove the needle into its heart. There was a howl, a sound like wood splitting, and a newborn screaming all at once. Blood, too dark to be wine, sprayed from the spout, drenching Elise's hands, staining the floor. The entire chamber shuddered. Nathaniel pulled her back. "What did you do?" But Elise was no longer listening. She stared at the thick red liquid trickling down her arms, her lips moving in silent incantation. The heartbeat stopped, then started again. Stronger, louder, from multiple directions. Nathaniel swung the flashlight. The drawings on the wall were changing, moving. The children were crawling toward the center, mouths open. The woman's eyes were bleeding now, her outstretched arms melting into vine. The floor beneath him buckled slightly. Then the whisper returned, louder this time. "You broke the seal." Elise looked up at him. "You have to go. Not without you." She shook her head. "I've already opened the family cask. The next vintage is me." "Elise, don't!" She shoved him back, hard. The chamber groaned as stones shifted. Dust fell like snow. "You have to tell them," she said. "Tell the town what the Townsends did." "I'll come back for you," Nathaniel swore, tears in his eyes. But the floor split between them, and she was gone, swallowed in a scream and a sea of red. Nathaniel ran, up the corridor, through the cellar, into the cold air of the vineyard. The earth beneath the vines was pulsing. Tiny cracks appeared along the rows, leaking dark wine upward, as if the land itself had been punctured. The house lights flickered. Somewhere far behind him, something groaned its first breath in over a century. Nathaniel collapsed near the tasting room, gasping. And then he saw it. Far down the hill, the family mausoleum, the one that hadn't been opened since 1904, was open. Inside, candlelight, footsteps, and a lullaby being hummed by a child with no name. The dead walk the rows. The wind had a taste. It wasn't just the usual Sonoma chill skimming over the vines. This one carried something thicker, like the aftertaste of spoiled communion wine. Nathaniel coughed it from his throat as he climbed the gravel path toward the mausoleum. Up the path, Emonia called at him. "Vitnikotrik!" In tongue, followed the path, noting the further he rode, the longer it bordered, the closer it got. Vitnikotili. Below, the vineyard shimmered with an uneasy glow, moonlight catching the edges of each grape leaf like a warning. The vines were twitching, not in the breeze, but with purpose. He didn't want to believe it, couldn't. And yet, the family tomb had opened. When he reached the entrance, the old iron door stood ajar, one hinge twisted as if forced from the inside. Scratches, long, uneven, marred the stone threshold. Not fresh, but wet. Inside, candlelight flickered in rows. The mausoleum's walls were lined with names. Edmund Townsend, 18711946. At the center stood a single empty crypt, its slab pulled free, the coffin lid shattered. A trail of dark footprints led out toward the eastern vineyard. Nathaniel heard the lullaby again. Not sung, but hummed. Soft, childlike, coming from nowhere, or everywhere. "Elise," he whispered, "what did you unleash?" But deep down, he already knew. At dawn, the town woke to a strange harvest. Vines had overgrown their supports, creeping across dirt paths like veins. Fruit hung heavy, too heavy, bulbous clusters of near-black grapes sweating crimson juice. Birds avoided the area. Even the insects seemed to have fled. At the diner on Main, old-timers talked about the blood bloom, a rare fungal condition that sometimes made grapevines bleed. But Nathaniel, seated at the far corner booth, knew better. He wasn't alone long. Sheriff Grant slid into the seat across from him, his fingers stained with what looked like grape juice, though Nathaniel suspected otherwise. "I heard you were at the vineyard last night," the sheriff said. Nathaniel didn't deny it. "Elise is gone? She leave?" Grant tilted his head. "No." Nathaniel leaned forward. "She opened something that wasn't supposed to be opened." Grant went quiet. Then, he said, "You know, my granddad warned me about the Townsends when I first took this job. Said their roots went deeper than the vines." "They built this town," Nathaniel muttered. "No," the sheriff corrected gently. "They grew it, like a crop, like something you plant and feed and water until it gets big enough to give something back." Nathaniel stared at him. You knew? Grant sipped his coffee. Not everything, just enough to stay out of that cellar. The silence between them stretched, thick as the grape syrup oozing from the cracks in the roads outside. Something's happening again, Nathaniel finally said. And Elise? She's part of it now. Or she always was, the sheriff replied. Just didn't know it yet. Back at the vineyard, workers arrived to find the barn doors wide open. Inside, every cask had burst. Wine flooded the floor like blood pooling after a massacre. Floating in the center of the room, eyes wide, was the body of Thomas, the cellar master, his skin as pale as paper, lips stained dark purple. On the walls, someone, or something, had written in thick dripping strokes, "Treacle the Tithies." The sheriff cordoned off the property by noon, but the damage was already done. Reporters showed up, so did the curious. Nathaniel stayed behind, watching from the tree line as a forensic team pulled Thomas's corpse out of the vat and carefully bagged it. He didn't say a word, because in the reflection on the wine-soaked floor, he saw something else. A second face, not his, a child's, and it smiled. That evening, Nathaniel returned to the Townsend house. No police, no caution tape. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was wrong, thick and damp like the inside of a root cellar. "Elise?" he called out. "If you're here, please." A sound answered him, skittering. He turned toward the grand staircase and froze. Something small was crawling down the steps. At first, he thought it was a raccoon. Then he realized it was hairless. Limbs too long, mouth too wide. Its eyes were hollow, but they glistened. It stopped midway, and then it whispered, "Daddy." Nathaniel bolted. He didn't remember leaving the house, only the scream, his or the thing's. He wasn't sure. He ran until the vineyard vanished behind the trees, until the stars blurred above him, until every breath felt like inhaling earth. And when he collapsed beside the riverbed, coughing blood, he knew. The wine wasn't wine anymore. It was a carrier, and something was waking in every glass that had ever touched a Townsend barrel. The root blood-packed Nathaniel didn't sleep that night. Even after dragging himself back from the riverbank, clothes soaked and vision blurred, he couldn't find rest. Not in the house, not in the guest room, not even in the deep, dark corners of his mind, because something had followed him back. He could hear it breathing, slow, rhythmic, just behind the wall. Not loud, but deep, like an old thing that had only recently remembered lungs. When dawn broke, it came in the color of rust. The vineyard shimmered again, but not with dew. This time, it glistened with a film of viscous red, coating the grapes, the leaves, even the soil itself, as though the earth had bled through. And walking down the rows, barefoot and expressionless, was Elise. Nathaniel saw her from the upper window. He called her name once, but she didn't turn. She was humming the same lullaby, the same tune from the cellar. He ran down to the vineyard barefoot, heart pounding. "Elise," he cried, "you have to stop this. Whatever you—" She turned slowly. Her eyes weren't hers. They were glassy, almost mirror-like. Her mouth opened, but the voice that came out wasn't her own. It was Margaret Townsend's. "You should have sealed the crypt, Nathaniel. But now you've watered the vines." He backed away, almost stumbling into a cluster of low-hanging grapes. They pulsed. "I don't understand," he whispered. "You do," the voice said. "You've always known. Your blood hums with it. That's why the vines grew faster when you came home." "No," he muttered. "No, this is just rot. Mold, some sickness in the land." Elise smiled. Margaret's smile on Elise's face. "The sickness is you." Later that day, the town priest, Father Benford, called Nathaniel to the church, said there was something he had to see. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I found this behind the altar," the priest said, handing him a folded cloth. Inside was a page, ripped, ancient, ink almost faded, but the words were unmistakable. "Let the root drink from the living. Let the vines drink from the blood." Nathaniel stared. Father Benford nodded grimly. I think Your ancestors made a pact, one that requires renewal every few generations. A blood tithe. Nathaniel laughed, bitter. And I suppose Elise is the vessel. No, the priest said softly. She's the keeper now. The vessel is still unchosen. Something cold wrapped around Nathaniel's gut. You mean someone still has to be sacrificed? The priest hesitated, then nodded. And you think it's me? Nathaniel said. I think the land does. That night, thunder rolled over the hills. Not lightning, just sound, as if the clouds were groaning under the weight of something too old to be spoken. Nathaniel walked back through the vineyard, the path crunching beneath his boots like dry bone. He carried nothing with him but the bottle. The last sealed bottle of pre-harvest wine, untainted, he hoped. At the barn, the doors opened for him. Not literally, but they were unlocked, swaying slightly in the windless night. Inside, the vats had been cleaned, the floors washed, but the smell remained. Fermentation and death, twisted into one, and in the center stood Elise, no longer humming, waiting. You brought it, she asked. He nodded. She extended her hand. Then let us drink. He didn't move. Elise, I don't think you understand what this is. I do, she said. This is what we are. The blood makes us eternal, but the land must be fed first. Then feed me, he growled. End this. She laughed, gentle, almost sweet. You were never the sacrifice, Nathaniel. You're the heir. And from behind the barrels it stepped forward, the child, pale, silent, eyes glowing faintly like fungus in rotwood. Its mouth opened. Daddy, it whispered, and Elise smiled, stepping back into the shadows. As the thing crawled forward, Nathaniel realized he hadn't been called back to save the vineyard. He'd been called to seed it again, beneath the skin of the vineyard. They say you always recognize your child by the eyes. Nathaniel didn't. He stared into those milky, fungal glowing irises and found only the reflection of a man already buried. The child, if it could be called that, stood before him, barefoot, body pale and slick like it had been pulled from the bottom of a wine barrel. Its fingers, wrapped around Nathaniel's wrist, were colder than river stones. It smiled, and with that smile something inside Nathaniel cracked. Elise, he whispered, eyes flicking up toward the darkness beyond the barrels. What the hell is this? No answer. She was gone. So was the bottle. Only him and the thing remained. Daddy, it repeated, voice low, almost mournful. It cocked its head as if studying his shape. Nathaniel didn't run. He didn't scream. Instead, he knelt, because something deep inside him, something old, something older than memory, recognized the thing. Not in the mind, but in the marrow. He reached out, touched the child's face. It was damp, but not from sweat. A viscous, sap-like film coated its cheeks, sticky and warm. It smelled faintly of earth, of tannin, of decay, and when he whispered the name that came unbidden to his lips, Elias, the child blinked and smiled wider. The days warped after that. Time became soft, like overripe fruit. The sun rose, but Nathaniel didn't feel its warmth. The vineyard teemed with movement, but he saw no workers, no Elise, no Father Benford. Just the rows of grapes, drooping low, their skins stretched too thin, their cores heavy with something that wasn't wine. Nathaniel spent his nights in the cellar now, not because he wanted to, because he couldn't leave. Each time he tried, the stairs stretched. The door at the top blurred. He would blink and find himself right back among the barrels, the vats, the altar. Yes, there was an altar now, made of twisted vine roots and human bone, set into the floor like it had always been there. He remembered building it. He hadn't. He must have. Elias stood by it most days, silent, watching. He didn't eat. He didn't blink. But sometimes he sang. A song without words, a low hum that made the glass in the bottles hum in response. that made Nathaniel's bones itch, and every time he heard it, Nathaniel felt the urge to kneel, offer, to bleed. On the third morning, he found Elise sitting in the corner, face streaked with wine-colored tears. "You left me," he said. She looked up, face hollow. "You chose him," she replied. "The vineyard chose you." "This isn't life," he snapped. "This is rot. This is worshiping something that grows out of death." "Isn't that what wine is?" she said. "Fermented time, pressed skin, old blood. We just gave it shape." He walked toward her. She didn't move. "Elise, we need to end this. Burn the roots, salt the soil." She smiled sadly. "You can't burn what's inside you." She stood then, lifted her shirt. Carved into her abdomen were thin, curling scars. Not from blades, but from growth. From beneath, vines, moving even now. "They bloom under the skin," she whispered, and then she collapsed. Nathaniel buried her behind the barn, not deep, the soil refused it. Each time his shovel dug, the earth bled. Not metaphorically, it bled. Thick, dark liquid pooled in the holes, and beneath it roots writhed. He still dug, still laid her body down gently, arms folded, lips stained purple like she'd drunk communion from a barrel. He covered her with stones, and the next morning she was gone. Not disturbed. Gone. In her place, a young vine had sprouted. Its leaves were the same color as her eyes. He returned to the cellar and found Elias standing by the altar, hands held out. On the altar lay the same bottle Nathaniel had brought, the last pure one, unopened. But beside it now sat a second bottle, dark, veined with root, and bearing his family crest. He understood. One for the land, one for the bloodline. He was being asked to choose, and Elias smiled, beckoning him forward. As Nathaniel reached for the bottle, he noticed something that froze his hand midair. The reflection in the glass wasn't his, it was Margaret Townsend's. And she was smiling. The offering ferments. The bottle pulsed in his hands, not shook. Pulsed like a heartbeat. The voice again. "Drink, Nathaniel, the land is thirsty." His knuckles whitened around the neck of the bottle. It felt warm now, slick, as though something beneath the glass writhed slowly in rhythm with the vines above ground. Something aware, watching him. "Not yet," he whispered. But the altar disagreed. Roots rose from beneath the floor, curling like fingers. They slithered across the cold stone, wrapping gently around his legs. Not tight, not violent, almost inviting. A coaxing touch. Nathaniel backed away, but his heel struck something soft. He turned. It was Elise's shawl, the one she always wore during harvest, now soaked, dark, sticky. He picked it up, raised it to his face. It reeked of wine and rot, but beneath it, beneath the surface, he caught another scent, cinnamon, Elise's favorite soap. For the first time in days, weeks, months, he felt his throat tighten, emotion, regret. He didn't even know what day it was. Outside, the vineyard groaned with wind, or was it breath? The vines pressed against the windows. The wood creaked like joints shifting in a sleeping body, and beneath it all the altar waited, still pulsing, still patient. Nathaniel didn't drink, not that night. He hid the bottle, deep behind the barrels, buried in the cold stone where the vines hadn't yet reached. He didn't pray, he didn't sleep, he waited. And when he rose at dawn, he climbed the stairs. They didn't stretch this time. They didn't fight him. They welcomed him, like old friends. The door opened easily. Outside, the vineyard was quiet, but not dead. The vines had changed. They stood taller now, thicker, leaves darker than before, grapes bloated with something more than juice. And hanging from some of the branches, woven like ornaments, were things that looked like bones, too small to be animal, too smooth to be stone. He followed the rows, each step squelched in soil that no longer smelled of earth. Each breeze carried whispers, and every few feet a vine would twitch toward him, just slightly twisted like leaning in for a secret. He didn't flinch anymore. He just walked toward the old family house at the far edge of the property, a place long abandoned since the fire. He hadn't been back since he was a child. The door was ajar. Inside, the air hung heavy. Dust didn't settle here. Nothing had time to settle. The space breathed. Every wall warped inward, as if the house itself leaned toward the center, toward her. She sat in the rocking chair by the fireplace, hair white, skin thin as parchment. Margaret Townsend, still alive. Or something wearing her shape. "Hello, dear boy," she rasped, as if they'd just spoken yesterday. Nathaniel didn't speak. He stared. She raised a trembling hand, pointed toward the hearth. There, half buried in ash, lay another bottle. Twins to the one he had hidden. Identical in seal, crest, and weight, except this one glowed. A soft internal light, like fireflies trapped inside. "You hid it," she said, "but it cannot be hidden. The land remembers." Nathaniel took a slow step forward. "What is it?" he asked. "A blood vintage," she replied. "The first, the purest. You remember our harvests, the mistakes, the sacrifices, the awakening. It was always meant to return to you." He shook his head. "I didn't want this. I just wanted to save it, to save her." "Elise." "You did save her," Margaret whispered. She smiled, and the walls of the house groaned louder. "You fed her to the root. Now she sings in the sap." Nathaniel fell to his knees. The bottle before him vibrated gently on the brick. And then came the song, from nowhere and everywhere, a deep, slow harmony rising from the floors, the walls, the soil. 1,000 voices humming the same dirge, to one voice louder than the rest. Elise and Elias, together, calling him home. He took the bottle. He didn't uncork it. He bit through the wax, cracked the seal with his teeth. The liquid spilled across his tongue, thick and alive. It burned, it crawled, it wept. And then it sang. Nathaniel screamed, not from pain, from understanding. Every grape he'd ever touched, every barrel he'd ever filled, every harvest, every hand, every cut finger and broken back, it all bled into this. The wine was not wine, it was memory. It was offering. It was him. He dropped the bottle. It shattered on the hearth, but the liquid did not spill. It moved, coiled, formed words in the ash, one final root. Nathaniel ran. He didn't remember leaving the house, only that he was beneath the vineyard now, in the catacombs. The ones Father Benford said were sealed decades ago, but they weren't sealed now. They breathed. He walked the stone paths, torch in hand. Each chamber lined with barrels, their staves thumping like drums. Each wall carved with names. His family, all of them. And one more, his own, freshly etched. He turned. The altar stood in the center, not the one in the cellar, a larger one, older, with veins that pulsed. And from its base, something rose. Roots, yes, but more. Limbs, a figure formed. And from the bark-like skin of its chest, a mouth opened sideways, and it spoke, in Elise's voice. "Nathaniel, it's time. The last vintage," the altar breathed. Not metaphorically, not with suggestion or illusion. It breathed, a slow, deliberate rise and fall, like lungs struggling beneath rotting flesh and tangled vine. And at its center, the thing that beat like a heart, grotesque, bulbous, slick with sap, now bore his face. Not just a likeness, his actual face. Nathaniel staggered back. "No!" But the altar exhaled, and with that breath came a voice. No longer Elise's, no longer Elias's. This was older, hungrier. It knew his name before he spoke it. It knew his thoughts before he could resist them. "You were planted," it said, "ripened. You are the final fruit." Nathaniel gripped the torch tighter. The flame wavered. The catacombs shivered. He turned. But the tunnels had changed again. The walls twisted like intestines. Barrels leaked dark wine that hissed as it struck the stone. Roots crawled across the ceiling like veins pumped by something unseen. And then he saw them, faces, dozens, hundreds, pressed just beneath the stone. Men, women, children, all with wide, wine-dark eyes and open mouths, as if mid-scream or mid-song. One face he recognized instantly. Elise. Her mouth moved, but not to scream. She whispered, "Stay." He ran, not toward escape. There was none. He ran deeper, toward the fermenting heart of the vineyard, toward the place the Townsends never spoke of. The first cellar, built before permits, before records, before names. Every step forward the air thickened, not just humid, sweet. Too sweet. It filled his nostrils with a sick perfume of grape and bile. The torch dimmed, then sputtered. He didn't drop it. Something took it, from the shadows. An arm, no, a vine shaped like an arm snatched the flame and swallowed it whole. Darkness, but he could still see. Somehow, the walls glowed faintly, not with light, but with memory. Moving images pulsed across the stone. His great-grandfather holding a pruning blade to his own wrist, blood falling onto thirsty roots. His grandmother, Margaret, naked beneath moonlight, whispering Latin verses to a mound of earth that twitched. Himself, at age 12, buried to the neck in soil as part of a family tradition. A ritual, a planting. He had screamed then. They told him it was just symbolic. But now he knew. The vineyard remembered everything, and it never forgot its seed. He reached the final chamber. Massive, round, a perfect circle cut into earth that pulsed like skin. In the center, a vat, tall as a man. No ladder, no spout. Just a smooth basin filled to the brim with wine black as space. Something inside it stirred, a ripple. Then a limb. Pale. Human. A hand clawed the edge. Another followed, and slowly, gracefully, a body emerged. Elise. But not. This version wore her skin like memory wears nostalgia. Too perfect, too still, too bright around the edges. Her eyes were wrong, too wide, too knowing. "Nathaniel," she cooed. He stepped back. "You're not her." "I am," she said. "I'm the part you offered, the part that stayed." He shook his head. "You died," she smiled. "And what is death in a place that drinks the soul?" Behind her, the vat pulsed. The liquid rose slightly, as though breathing too. Then others emerged. Elias, his father, even Margaret. All perfect, all wrong. They circled the vat like priests around a font. "Drink," they said. "Inherit. Become." Nathaniel fell to his knees. "I didn't want this." "You did," the chorus answered. "When you stayed, when you offered Elise, when you opened the root." They extended their hands. "You are vintage," he screamed, completely clawed at his own arms. Tore the old brand from his forearm, where the family crest had been seared during the harvest of '93. Blood flowed. The ground drank it hungrily. The vat glowed brighter, and from the depths, a final shape rose. It was not human. It was not vine. It was both. A thing sculpted of twisted roots and flesh and wine, crowned in dead grapes and bone. Its chest marked with the Townsend crest. It opened its mouth. Nathaniel's own voice spilled out. "The root remembers." And the chapter ends with his voice joining the chant, unwillingly, his own lips moving as if possessed, as the entity stepped toward him, arms outstretched. The final root. The thing wearing Nathaniel's voice moved toward him. He couldn't move. His body refused, muscles locked as though bound by vines beneath the skin. His chest rose and fell in short, panicked breaths, but the rest of him was stone. No, not something beneath him shifted, warm and wet and hungry. The altar heart throbbed behind the creature, its rhythm now synchronized with his own pulse. Thump, thump, thump. "Nathaniel," it whispered again. His own voice echoed from the creature's mouth, layered with others, male, female, old, infantile. All the Townsends, all the vintage. You are the vine's end, it hissed. And its beginning. It reached out, fingers like twisted roots, bones exposed beneath bark-like skin, each joint flexing with obscene familiarity. His arm raised against his will. Their hands touched, and everything opened. There was no pain, only memory, a floodgate rupturing. He was Elias, kneeling beside Elise as she whispered her last breath into the soil. He was Margaret, slashing her palm over the first sapling, begging it to bear her sorrow. He was Solomon Townsend, standing atop the bluffs with the first map of the valley in his shaking hand, hearing the voice from below promise eternity in red. He was Elise, dancing barefoot through frost-covered vines under a red moon, her eyes wide with grief and beauty and inevitability. He was every sacrifice. He was the seed, and now he understood. The vineyard was never cursed. It was designed, crafted through blood and memory and grief, every root fed with story, every barrel pressed with sorrow, every bottle sealed with a name. The Townsends had made a pact, not with some demon or devil or forgotten god, but with the land itself, a pact to never forget, to preserve legacy at any cost, even humanity, even Elise, even himself. When he opened his eyes again, the room had changed. The vat was gone. So was the creature, so were the ghosts. Only the altar remained, pulsing gently, now no larger than a tree stump. A knife rested on top, antique, clean, his family's crest etched into the hilt, a twisted vine around a flame. He approached. Hands trembling, the whisper returned, not from behind, but from inside him. You choose what the land remembers. He raised the knife, but didn't cut. Not his skin, not his soul. Instead, he turned and walked toward the cellar exit, toward the first light he'd seen in what felt like hours, maybe days. The narrow tunnel curved upward and the air grew sweeter, too sweet, again. And just before reaching the surface, he stopped. There was a mirror embedded in the stone. Small, circular, gilded. He hadn't noticed it before. He stared. The face looking back was not his. At least, not entirely. The jaw was his, but the eyes, wine dark, the same as Elise, the same as Elias, the same as... The whisper returned, this time low and final. Vintage doesn't end, it decants. The next scene opened on the vineyard above. A perfect morning, birdsong, a light breeze. Nathaniel walked between rows of sleeping vines, pruning shears in hand, his footsteps deliberate, measured. Tourists would arrive in a few hours. The new tasting room was ready, new bottles, new labels, all carrying the new estate name, Elise. He smiled, eyes shaded beneath his cap, and just beneath the soil the roots pulsed softly. Feeding, growing, remembering. Back inside this cellar, in the deepest chamber, the altar stood quiet, still. Then, a heartbeat, one more. Soft, rhythmic, and from the cracks in the stone, a drop of wine rolled down. Thick, dark, and pulsing with light. It landed in a silver goblet set upon the altar. The liquid shimmered. Inside it, a flicker of Elise's face. Then Nathaniel's. Then yours. Yes, yours. You feel it, don't you? That pull, that sweetness in your throat, that whisper in the soil. You came here for a story, but stories live forever here, and you're already part of the next harvest. What if the wine you drink remembers you? There's a vineyard nestled deep in the hills of Oregon, off the maps, off the roads, and far beyond reason. They say the soil there is rich, but no one asks what it's rich with. This is the story of inheritance, sacrifice, and a ritual sealed in crimson. Story where each bottle holds a secret, and every toast is a pact. Welcome to the vineyard, where blood runs deeper than wine. Drink carefully. Some spirits don't stay in the barrel.